All right, so here's just an update of where we've been these last couple of days. So, I got my replacement drives from Seagate. Those are those up there. And if you're wondering why are they sitting on top of my computer, it's because there's a 200mm fan that's constantly blowing on top. That's pulling in air from the front, 200mm, goes through the case, comes out. And then you ask yourself, well, that's not a good place to be. That's your exhaust fan. You know, that's going to be hot air. It normally would be. My GPUs rarely run at all. I don't know if that fan is, I guess it is. You know, I originally built this for Bitcoin mining / gaming rig, but then I found myself I'm not really using it for that anymore. So there's that. And the second thing is the CPU is cooled down by this Corsair cooler, but it's all the heat's coming out the back. So this is really warm, but the air that's coming up here is nice and cool. So I wanted to keep these drives maintained, you know, give them a nice breeze. Obviously, they're not going to be in the case. They're still under warranty, so I'm not going to crack them out of the case. But anyway, so they're nice and cool up there. Here are the other drives, and I'm probably going to get a fan on here in a little bit. So these are the old Seagate drives, and right now I'm transferring them over. So here's what I did. I didn't want to do the same setup as I had before. NTFS formatted, drive 1, drive 2, and then I copy everything that I need to drive 1 and then duplicate it manually to drive 2. I looked at other solutions. I mean, obviously Windows backup. You can use other replication software. There's different things you could do. But the more I thought about it, I thought, you know, this is just, it's kind of ridiculous. I don't want an extra process. I don't want to make a scheduled task. I don't want something that the machine has to do on an interval. I want it to be immediate, you know. So that's what I thought. Okay, you know, why don't you spend the time and make a FreeNAS box? So I did. I spent several hours the other night creating this thing. It's an Athlon 64X2 running at 2.8 gigahertz with 4 gigs of DDR2 memory. I was going to use it to set up FreeNAS. And the attractive thing about FreeNAS was, you know, you can have a hard drive, well, basically hard drives combined to make a larger storage solution, and then use ZFS to, you know, mitigate any errors and things like that. So it was supposed to be this place where I can dump my data. I really had to deal with the compromises because one of the compromises is, you know, you have a whole other box here. I mean, this one's running a 600-watt power supply, and that's just another machine taking up electricity. So there's that. And then the other thing was, you know, those hard drives would be connected to this via USB 2 because it's an old motherboard and that's all it has. So, oh yeah, you can buy a USB 3 because it does have PCI Express slots in it. You can get just a USB 3 add-in card, and I thought, okay, yeah, you could do that, but now I'm adding cost for this backup solution. It's also costing me more power. And then the other thing about it is, you know, it's got to be connected to the network because you can't interface it any other way. So, you know, you're just compounding the issue. You're going from a USB 3 drive to a USB 2 drive that's going through an old machine through a gigabit connection. When I finally got it all set up, because it took me forever, I had so many problems with FreeNAS. First of all, I tried to install it onto the flash drive. I burned a CD image and it wouldn't work. Then I tried burning the image to a flash drive and then taking that flash drive to install it on another flash drive, which worked, but then the system wouldn't boot. And so I thought, hey, it's going to be a system dedicated to this. I know FreeNAS really wants a flash drive, but I got to put a hard drive in there because I got to test this. So I put the hard drive in there and installed, no problem. Wakes up, everything's fine. Then I log into the FreeNAS, I create my my drive, I format the drives to ZFS, I combine them, I make my data set, and then I make a CIFS share. And then when all that's said and done, I go to start copying data to it, and I get about 15 megabytes per second, and then it stops. And then it waits, and then it picks back up again to 15 or so, and then it stops. So you get these peaks and valleys. You know, you depending on how much data. It was just a test, so I just copied a couple hundred megabytes at a time. In a couple cases, a couple gigabytes at a time, and it would just go up and drop, go up and drop. And at that point, it was going to take me weeks to transfer 2.7 terabytes over with that terrible throughput. So I thought, wow, even after all that, I got to research this. So I researched it some more, and it looks like FreeNAS really wants its 8 gigs of RAM. Like I said, it only has 4, and it's not even ECC memory. It's just regular unbuffered memory. So I thought, well, do I have to spend extra money to upgrade the memory too? This is not turning out the way I thought it was going to. You know, I watched a couple of videos on YouTube where people just grab an old box, throw FreeNAS on it, and next thing you know, everybody's happy. Well, I'm not getting the results they were getting on this machine, and that's the only spare box. I actually had to take 2 computers apart to build all that together to make it the best of the spare parts that I had. So the FreeNAS thing, it just didn't work out. So while I was researching FreeNAS, I was trying to figure out, you know, this whole throughput thing. People were saying it's got to be the memory, got to have more memory, or a faster processor, which all of that I was not going to be able to invest in. And then just out of the blue, I don't even know how the two were connected. I read an article about storage pooling in Windows 8. And it blew me away. I couldn't believe that this feature, apparently we've had this feature now for about 3 years, and I had no clue. So just in summary, the storage pooling in Windows 8 allows you to combine hard drives to make bigger hard drives, or bigger storage pools. And so when you have that, then you also have these options where you can do parity or you can do mirroring. And so I thought, well, mirroring is exactly what I want. Uh-oh. I hear some clicking from that external drive, and my synchronizing has stopped. I'll give it a second. And this is what I was worried about, because when I was on the phone with Seagate, they were asking me to, before they send out these other drives, they were asking me to do some tests, and one of the things it was doing is it was not being recognized by the system. It wasn't mounting. So I don't know. We'll give it a few more seconds here. But anyway, back to storage pooling. So storage pooling allowed me to combine these 2 hard drives into... Oh, we lost our focus. Here we go. To combine the 3 terabytes into a mirrored 3 terabyte. So not 6 terabytes, 3 terabytes total, but 3 terabytes mirrored. And it's 3 terabytes mirrored instantly. As soon as I write to the drive, which is associated, or which is created in Windows, it immediately duplicates that data to both drives. So now I have a redundancy. And then I'm experimenting with this resilient file system, the REFS, that is part of the storage pooling solution, which is its enterprise level, but obviously not with all the bells and whistles. But what it does is it gives you error correction on the fly. So you don't have to run check disk on these drives anymore, because it looks for errors and tries to fix them on its own. So that was definite plus. I'm like, well, why didn't I know about this before? Anyway, so I did some tests. Throughput is very good. I'm getting about 60 megabytes per second normally. Sometimes it'll burst up to 110, 120 megabytes per second, but usually it floats right back. When you start getting the larger files, it starts getting back down to 60 megabytes per second. So this is where we're at. I'm copying the data over now, hopefully. Oh, yeah, it looks like it just picked up. And you'll see here with all these little files, it's just zooming through them. I have a bunch of these little files. You know, iPhoto makes all kinds of crazy stuff, so you can see that the throughput, it doesn't have to be that high because the files aren't that big. They're maybe a couple 100K each. So, you know, right now it says 360 days. Obviously that number is going to go down when you start getting into the larger files. But right now I just want to get the data off of here. I want to start sorting through here. And it looks like we're having some trouble. It's probably because it's trying to refresh this screen in the background. I've had so much trouble with this amount of data pumping through applications to synchronize and compare. You know, this system has 16 gigs of DDR3, but the applications themselves just seem to struggle with whatever list that they make, you know, a comparison table and all the actions. So Free File Sync is the only one on the Windows side of things that has been stable enough that I could use it. And I don't know what just happened here. Oh, it's still trying to do something. It hasn't been It hasn't done this before, so this is new. But oh, and so here's the other thing. When you pull the hard drives together, now the system doesn't recognize them as they used to. Before, it would recognize the Seagate drives. If I run the ctools on them, then you can see them in the list, and then you can select them and you can do your basic checks or your smart status and all that stuff. Which is the other thing too, is one of the things I really want to know in smart status is the temperature, because these drives do run hot. And I don't want to be writing data to a drive that's really, really warm. So that's why it's on these fans. I actually installed this guy. So when I'm working late at night and I got the machine doing all kinds of crazy things, it gets hot in here. I don't want those drives to suffer. So I'm going to see if it's going to keep synchronizing. But that's basically the last leg, because I knew I was going to run into some problems in the last push trying to get the data on these drives. So once I get those done, I'll get those out of here. I have my redundancy. And then it just becomes sorting through the terabytes of stuff that I've just been putting off for many, many years. So, yeah. So anyway, I'm going to spend the rest of the night now trying to get all this data off the drive. And we'll post an update when we're done.